Hi everyone, welcome to Living La Vita Loca podcast, a retro gaming podcast for some of your retro gaming needs. My name is Faz.
I'm Fiona.
Hey,
I'm Rich.
Hooray! We've got a Rich and Fiona this week after having a week of, plague, pestilence,
Yeah.
all that kind of
Sure.
jazz. But it's good to all be together, so Happy New Year to you guys.
Happy New Year.
We've actually slaved. We haven't done that.
No.
Saved. I couldn't say it. Saved pleasantries. That's really hard to say for me. For the podcast to actually, say hello to each other for the first time this year. So, how have you guys been over Christmas and New Year? What have you been up to?
Well, apart from being ill.
Yeah, apart from that, no one has any sympathy for anybody around here. So, don't worry about that shit. Gaming things have you done over Christmas?
Gaming things.
I'm doing my homework on this, really.
On this being what?
Do you want me to reveal it now or save it till?
I don't know. I don't know why I'm being coy about
Very
it.
coy.
I don't know why I'm being coy about
Trailer
it.
this on the internet. Why are you being coy?
I would
Join us
trail
in 5
this.
minutes to find out more.
I wouldn't trail this. So, well, I guess I wanted you to introduce it, and because it, as you alluded to before the podcast, this is your specialist subject or a specialist subject of yours. Hence why you're here to run the show, and I'll just cower in the corner. I think when it comes to my bit because I'm useless at this kind of stuff. But go on, Fiona. What are we doing this week or this week's?
Why are we here?
Why are we here?
Specifically today in this room, as far as I'm willing to help you with.
Fair.
For more questions than that, consult your therapists. We're here to talk all things Final Fantasy, which is very exciting. It's one of my favourite franchises.
Yes.
And I think we're doing two, aren't we? So this week we're going to be talking about
we have not discussed.
Yeah, we're doing mainline first. Sure.
Did we discuss that? I don't know.
No,
It's okay.
we
It's fine.
Mainline first, and then the spin-offs. Good.
Mainline first, and then an episode on some of the spin-offs.
Yep.
So,
Go!
take over your whole podcast. I have prepared for this.
This is fine. This is okay.
I've
This is
got-
what we want.
I've got a Google Keep set of notes, which has what your listeners can't see, but it's a lovely set of 3 chocobos doing a little dance as a GIF.
Very hypnotic.
Yeah. To get you in the zone.
Remember you used to get those things where you just like, when you were a kid, like the puzzles where you just rotate them and you
the
just do
little,
that.
holograms.
Yeah, holograms.
Exactly.
Just do that, and you're like,
Exactly
I'm just gonna keep doing
Just
that.
like that. Yeah.
The only thing that made me feel alive.
Well, you've ruined GIFs for me because now every time I'm so sophisticated, I've got a GIF for this occasion. It's basically the same level as having a shiny bit of foil back in 1996.
Yeah.
But you don't have to print it out or anything like that. So
No. Or cross your
progress.
eyes either. So.
True.
Yeah, download it straight to a mainframe. Cool.
So I was suggesting that we start with a bit of an I Spy Spotter's Guide to Final Fantasy.
To chocobos?
Well, chocobos are included because, Final Fantasy is it's obviously like a series, but I've been boring Richard a lot about this for the last sort of month ever since I agreed to do this, so he's going to be really pleased this is over soon. One of the things I've been boring him about is Final Fantasy, I realised, is quite an unusual franchise. So if you think about your sort of Harry Potter, sort of 7 books or whatever, a franchise normally follows a set of characters or a very similar world. Even like your Lord of the Rings things where you've got The Hobbit and then Lord of the Rings and then that one that no one else has read but they pretend they have done. They're all the same world.
Mm-hmm.
Final Fantasy is a bit weird because it doesn't do that in most cases. I think there's 1 or 2 exceptions. But what they do have is like a similar tone or kind of aesthetic, or like often some character names that pop up, although the characters themselves are not the same. There's little touch points, aren't there?
Yeah.
It is weird, isn't it? Because, like you say, most people try and cling on to your Harry Potter or your Hermiones or your Rons and stuff, but we cling on to black mages being a thing all the way in every single game. It's just like
That's one of them.
Yeah.
It's just
You'll have a Cid, but there'll be about 19 different Cids over time. And,
yeah, you're cracking on through. What else do you think I've got on my list?
I
hadn't written it down, but that was lovely.
what is that called? Isn't that just the celebration music?
Yeah,
Yeah.
you
You won.
celebration bit,
The
isn't it?
celebratory music at the end of a battle.
There's quite a lot of little musical fingerprints that are like the prelude and stuff like that will pop up in slightly different ways.
What did I have on my list? I'm going to knock out my list because it'll be
considerably
shorter. Yeah, exactly.
Right,
yeah.
you guys crack on. I'll go through the Sour Patch Kids.
I'm so unperceptive yet. So in fact, you guys are on Port, which is I'm very jealous
Port
of.
and Sour Patch Kids.
Yeah.
Well,
But like that's a party. That's a Final Fantasy party. I'm looking forward to how that goes later. So my Final Fantasy tropes, I guess we were calling them really, and I'm going to knock some out, and then hopefully Fiona will round them out with another 100 that I've just missed because I'm just not paying any attention. I put length/girth of game. I guess that's in general JRPGs. I kind of want to talk about that a little bit later on. I think really probably towards the end. Once I've got all my opinions about games out the way, and then I'll just generalize them and really annoy some people. Hair/gown blowing in the wind when someone's thinking or pensive.
that's
good.
nice.
That seems to happen a lot in Final Fantasy games, especially in cutscenes and things. And then I guess an addendum to that would be that there's lots of long, loose fitted clothing. Like there's lots of scarves and shawls.
Yeah.
Belts where belts should not be worn.
Lots of belts. If you've only got one belt in a Final Fantasy universe, you're a loser.
Yeah, you're doing it wrong. Yeah.
But like, is there a point in the games where belts become equipment? Or I can't remember. Final Fantasy 9 had them?
Maybe in some of them, yeah. Not sure.
I was like, because I was playing through the one again, why am I being coy? I was playing through Final Fantasy IV, the 3D remake, and that didn't have belts as equipment. And I haven't played any earlier Final Fantasies than that one. And I was like, I didn't know if that was a thing, but yeah. Scarves. I put a lot of scarves.
Yeah.
So I'm like, it's almost like, you have to have a certain scarf or something in Final Fantasy IX. I think it is like cast magic. I'm like, when has a scarf ever been magic? Like magic carpets, magic wands. So what else have we got? King/queen controlled by unknown demonic. It's like the Metacritic all again. Demonic force. Have you got any? Is that kind of?
I didn't have that specifically, but there's often like a king or a queen or some kind of like nation problem. It's all quite high fantasy, isn't it? A lot of the time.
And then I guess you could also get into the kind of like cosmic terror kind of vibe of like, you've got this even greater evil above it somehow.
One evil, and then like everyone's like, yay, ba 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 ba. Oh shit, there's another one.
This one's even more evil.
And then you get to the last boss, and there's always like, well, actually, there's another form of it. And it's got like
it's 20 hours long, and like
that Dragon Ball style. This is my final form. Now this is my final form.
No save points for you.
Yeah. Oh, so annoying. Main male protagonists with good hair but bad angst.
That's a really good summary. I did put hair gel overload as well.
Well, you've all been there.
Definitive hair.
Definitive hair.
I had my hair kind of a bit like cloud spiked when I was like 17.
No way. Did you bring a picture?
No,
I'm really struggling to picture that without the beard.
Well, without the hair, like the balding man. So I had it like like spiked up. It was a bit weird. Mist. It's just always so fucking misty. Like, probably not in the later games, but earlier games.
No, I don't know.
It's always like
some misty bits.
It's like, there's monsters in the mist, or the mist is descending, or you've got to go into the mist. And I'm like,
Fantasy IV that had a mist dragon as well. Or something
I mean, it's obviously easy for me to sort of bring that up because I've been playing Final Fantasy IV, but like most sort of like again Final Fantasy IX and sort of that mist and like that the mist is cleared, and I'm like, fucking hell, like is it just so much mist that isn't? It's just like.
Like elemental problems.
Yeah. Get meteorology out.
Yeah. It's like on Dark Place. It's like Scotch mist. It's just like, oh my god. They struggle to kill off the main characters. I don't know if that's something you've kind of got as it, but like I'm not saying they should be doing that all the time, but certainly there's always like, that character's fallen down a well / into hell, or fallen off a ship and just fallen to their death, and it's like, but they're back later, like they were absolutely fine, like is in all like
there is a lot of falling, isn't there?
Quite a lot of that. Falling is a big thing, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm trying to think like like again, Final Fantasy IX, Final Fantasy VII. I think even though there is a big death in Final Fantasy VII that everyone talks about, like the actual whatever, like if you come into this now and you're like, what, no, Aerith, like, as in, like, like go away. You
spoilers for the late 90s.
Got plenty of them. Mr. Blobby, whew, you know, what happened to him? Anyway.
He could be a boss.
Yeah. He's terrifying. He's fucking terrifying.
Yeah, the acne flan.
Is that Noel Edmonds? Oh, God. Oh, dear.
Have got monsters, though, like familiar types of monsters, like flans crop up, and like things that were called Marlboros, and in the later games they've had to rename them, presumably because of some kind of tobacco company. Suddenly being like, oh, these guys are huge, and we're the bad guys.
And my last one was just generally level grinding, like as in which isn't just Final Fantasy, but JRPGs or RPGs or anything you have to do level grinding in. But yeah, just I mean, this isn't a trope per se. It's just that I'm fundamentally against it as a mechanism in gaming, which is probably not good for the podcast. But like, it's just like I don't understand. Like it feels like you pay for a game and you want to be able to access the story all the way through at some point, which is completely fine. But like to have to grind to a level 70, level 80 or whatever, like as in when actually you're probably naturally at like level 55. It's just like, well, that's so annoying to me. Like, as in, why are you being such dicks about it? Just like, let us get to the end and at least see an ending. Like, as in, maybe you could be like, oh, you'll see another ending if you're 20 levels better or something. It's just like, I feel like there's just not enough options with level grinding. So that's my grind with level grind. And that's me. I'm out of tropes. Like, as in, so.
I agree with that one. The later couple of games I've played don't really have that as bad because I think it's kind of updated expectations a bit, but I played 10 and 12, and both of those I triumphantly got to the boss fight, had my arse absolutely handed to me, and I had to really go back through an awful lot to try and get the skills I needed. Okay, so else on my list I've got parties. So like you often have, you play as one character maybe, but you would have a party in earlier games. You'd often be able to switch them in and out, and they might have either like a formal job system or like a specialism of some kind. So if you need a black mage, you bring in this dude. If you need your ninja, you get this guy in, that sort of thing. You have some kind of magic system, and often you'd get like a summons or an esper. They sometimes change the name, but basically it's normally like the win button. Like you get to summon this like mega beast, and they're all really cool things like Odin or like Ifrit, fire demon, or like Shiva, goddess of ice, and they just like pummel your enemies in some kind of awesome animation. You're like, I am king of everything, and the next monster kills you dead.
Yeah, because you haven't done enough level grinding.
I was going to say, until your enemy then uses theirs, you're like, oh no, it's not fair. You can't be using your summons. What is this? Shield, protect.
And I've also got, and these are just because like they're relevant to what I want to talk about, so I want to make sure I get them all in so I can complain about them later.
Cool, that's fine.
Chocobos, it talks about briefly. They're the big yellow birds that you run around on in the overworld, and they're adorable. Moogles are little fuzzy white things.
Yeah, I've got a Moogle t-shirt.
Sometimes
fucking love Moogles.
Fucking love Moogles.
Kupo.
Give me them
Moogles. I would live with it. Like, they got cat ladies. I'd be like, Moogles. Like, as in, like, just cuddle me. A Moogle cafe. Like,
somewhere in Japan, that's a thing, I'm sure.
Almost certainly.
Crystals, you miss crystals.
Yeah.
Such a big thing. There's always a crystal. Like, that's kind of one of the three threads, and sometimes they're like trinkety things that give you magic, and sometimes they're the source of your problem, and sometimes they're the solution to your problem, and sometimes they're just sort of there as window dressing, but there's always some crystals.
Is that still the case in the later games?
Oh my goodness, very much so.
Oh right, okay, that's interesting. Okay, I thought maybe they'd gone away from it. I mean, I haven't played Final Fantasy past 9, so I got to like double digits, and I was like, there's too many numbers to get into my brain here.
Intense.
I'm like, yeah, exactly. Yeah. I'm good, even though I know that like there are better ones out there, but I kind of just stopped, I think. So stayed old school with my Final Fantasies. But yeah, I didn't know if that was just like an ye olde crystal world I was living in.
No.
That sounds like a drug
still
thing.
Very, very up and hip
Crystals
with
and
it.
pixels.
Really big swords you missed out earlier.
Yep.
Can't believe you missed out really big swords. Like swords that are so big that like
unfeasibly
there's
big
no
swords.
way that the characters would be able to sit down or tie their shoelaces without suffering something terrible.
And yet there are cutscenes where they do.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So fucking badass though.
So cool.
I love it. Like, a couple of extra inches of sword Good. Good by me. I'm quite happy.
Is that the quote we're all getting on t-shirts?
Oh, with a Moogle.
And then finally, I won't bang on about these, but incomprehensible or complex plots, not necessarily in a bad way, but just you get to the end, or I get to the end of the game, and I'm like, I'm not 100% sure. I was swept along, and there was like, you know, some kind of crisis of nations or like threat to the world, and I fixed it, but I couldn't tell you how.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other one is banging music.
Yeah.
Oh, right, okay. Yeah.
Well, that might be some of the later ones.
Is that
presumably not so much in your early pixely ones.
Yeah.
But 7 onwards, bangers.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, I mean, I did used to have like the battle music for 7 as my like ringtone, and I would let my phone ring for ages because I was just like, diddle. So everyone was like, "What's that?" It's like, "Oh, what is that? What is that?" You know, like knocked it up on my 3310 on like, you know, like a little generator. I was like, "Yeah, so cool." That and like the Grand Theft Auto 3 pager theme, and I was like, so proud of myself.
Nice.
Back in the days when you had to really work for your polyphonic ringtone.
Oh, yeah, I know. I never rang up for them or paid for them for those websites. Oh, I miss those days, like music channels, where it was just like, you know...
get the little inserts in CD cases. God, I sound old.
It's a retro podcast, you
No, they just don't have the inserts in the CD cases. They don't have the CD case, they don't have the CDs, they don't have the inserts.
They don't have the sleeve notes.
Do you even have music anymore? I don't know. It's just like... Yeah. Cool. Awesome. Rich, anything to add to that? Say what now?
I was just remembering being old. Do I have anything to add to that? No, I think that's basically tallies with everything that I would have suggested. Nothing springing to mind. I managed to sneak in the mention of belts. That was about all I had.
Yeah. So, Final Fantasy main line, you know, whatever you want to call it, I don't know, through thread
Choo-choo.
Thank you. Of games. So how many are there? 16?
16 to date.
Cool. Now,
depending on how you count it, because Final Fantasy VII's doing that remake that's chopping it into 3, and
you got different editions of 15 as well with the DLC or not, and or like
and a 13 and 10, because you got 10 and 10-2, and
I think you have 3 13s.
Yeah, it's like something like Lightning
the
Returns or
original
something.
Numbered ones, 16.
Right. Okay. Cool. And before we get into the ones that we've done this time round, are there any games that we are not reviewing or looking at that you would say are your favourites? So you just want to get a bit of a 5-10 minute chat in about that you sort of say, oh, you know, like, I haven't played that for ages, but I loved it at the time.
I'm going to have some more Sour Patch Kids.
Oh no.
I've actually Trojan horsed mine in.
Okay, well that's fine.
But,
You've done well as well.
But I did want to give a shout out to in case they're listening.
The Final Fantasies.
Hey, you know, I'm open for voice acting gigs in the next one. I could wear a number of belts. I'm willing.
Regional accent.
Yeah, regional accent.
We had this crazy lady turn with 7 belts on.
And she was an instant hire.
She would not leave.
No. So ones that I've enjoyed a lot are the 7. I've not played the original 7. My attention span was too poor because I wasn't playing it at the time, so I tried to do it recently, and just the polygons and the slog and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
But the remake, so good. I'm so excited for the new one that's coming out soon.
Cool.
I might book a day off work.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Get on it, guys. And 12.
That's proper gaming.
12 is surprisingly good.
Is that the one that you read the recap of the plot?
I was trying to refresh my memory
earlier.
of the plot. 12 is like...
Couldn't say half the words.
So, yeah, at one point, everyone's banging on about deified nethysite.
Sure.
Yeah.
Which is basically some god crystal that means you're important. But it's a really complex plot. Everyone talks like they're in a Shakespeare amdram, and like... Still, something pulled me through it because the characters were outlandish and the music was really sweeping and great, and the scenes were just like really cool places you went to, like a deserty bit and like a weird place with loads of, I'm going to say this and you're going to have the wrong image, but bunny ladies.
Great.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
I couldn't see any male bunnies, so I had a lot of questions that weren't answered. But and there's a sky ship and a cool pirate and like a princess with a battle axe trying to reclaim her throne. And do you know what? Great, loved it.
All the tropes of all the other fantasies. I'm like, all I'm hearing
all in
is
one.
I'm hearing 8, 9, 6.
The archetypal Final Fantasy.
Exactly, lots of boxes ticked.
So, Rich, you turned away from that question. Are you like, I decline?
Well, no, I'm reviewing my
All
favourite.
right, okay, that's fine then. That's okay.
So
Cool.
yeah, tick.
So that I mean, for me, so I am reviewing for the 3D remake for the DS, but of favourites, mentioned them already a couple of times. So 7 and 9, absolutely loved both of those on PlayStation 1, and I did play them at the time of release, and I very much needed a walkthrough. That's the kind of sort of like RPG game that I am, but I still absolutely loved them. Apart from all the grind that is in that, just as I've already alluded to before. But even then, I still wanted to get all the way to the end of those games because I wanted to know what happened to the main characters because they meant a lot to me. So, but we're not going to go into detail about those games too much or anything. They'll probably come, in conversation towards the end of what we're doing. But who wants to go first for their review? Rich is reaching for the port. My word. All right. So, right, Fiona, I'm going to elect you being the Final Fantasist of the room.
So is that an official job title?
Yes, it is now. Well, it will be once you get tired.
Might be Square Enix.
So, do you want to tell us which mainline game that you are looking at and what you thought of it?
Sure, I do. I went super modern. I accidentally reviewing Final Fantasy XVI. It's accidental because, long story short, I've been waiting to get a PlayStation 5, and I knew I'd have to. This is going to sound terrible. What have I become? I knew I'd have to get one to be able to play the Final Fantasy VII next installment, right?
Right. Yeah.
So in my head it was going to happen, and I saw it in a sale just before Christmas, with Final Fantasy 16 bundled in, and I got it. And I wasn't going to buy 16 by itself because I'd already decided I would be disappointed by it.
Okay.
Based on the trailers.
Yeah.
I'll talk you through it. So, Final Fantasy 16. In fact, let's start with a quiz.
No,
what are some great classic? No, come on, you can do this. If you can't, you haven't done your homework. So try harder.
I definitely haven't.
So come on, like some classic Final Fantasy hero names. Hit me.
What, as in like just that we know
the
of?
really famous ones.
Squall,
Yeah,
Terra,
Zidane.
Block,
Tifa.
Yeah. The Barrett. I'm just
Kane.
thinking Kane. Yeah.
But cool names, right?
Yeah.
So Final Fantasy XVI's protagonist is Clive.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Clive. It doesn't get any better because his mates have names including Jill, Joshua, Gav, which I'm really not over.
Sorry,
and a lady
Gav's out
who's
there, but
literally called Karen and is a bit bitter and runs a shop. It's not spelt with a K, but it's still pronounced Karen. So
I'm slightly disappointed there isn't a Keith in there. If
there
I'm being
might
honest,
be
or
if
a
I
Trevor.
bothered more with the
I mean, there's enough around the Keith area, isn't there?
There was a Terence.
That's all right.
Yeah.
Terry,
Anyway.
I suppose.
I like Terrences and Trevors in the world. They usually seem to be nice people. So, I'm all about that. That's okay. Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, so I haven't quite finished it, but I'm very close. So I feel like I've got enough of a picture to review it well for you. But the story is basically you meet Clive when he's younger. Yeah, I know.
Just imagine it's like they're all sat around like a bowling green or something. Yeah, brilliant.
Spiritually never young. He's training to be a shield, which I think is another bit of a tropey thing, like the sort of protector of the chosen one, who happens to be his younger brother Joshua. And in their world, it's a bit different how the magic works. So instead of being able to summon these great creatures and press the win button like you've been able to do in the rest of the franchise, they're called something different. They're called icons in this, and people can actually embody them. So people will be called what's a dominant, and then they can transform into one of these creatures and wield their mighty powers. And basically every country in this tiny land has somebody who has one of these mighty powers, and there's a lot of battles, and it's basically Game of Thrones. It's Game of Thrones but with crystals.
Okay.
It's all very broody. It's all very dark. There's a big tragedy at the start that Clive then has to deal with manfully, and so for the rest of it, when you meet him as like a grown-up and play the rest of the game, he sort of talks like this all the time.
Is it Clive Owen?
It is a great voice to try to do.
If he's sad, if he's happy, if he's confused. It's all like, I don't know how he was doing it.
He's won awards for this.
He has won
Should
awards.
check that out.
And I just felt so distant from it. So
could I have a pie and chips, please?
yeah. So
No,
your
not
whole-
that sauce. The other one.
Clive would get pie and chips, wouldn't he?
And basically, the crystals in this are like, there's ones in each of the corners of the land, and they realise that they need to get rid of them for magic reasons, to help the world be a better place. And so they go about trying to kill all the crystals. On the way, Clive realises he can get more magical powers, and he gets a few more allies along the way. And then, yeah, it kind of stutters to a halt a couple of times. So it could be quite a good story, but the pacing is terrible. There's one point where, so again, like a lot of Final Fantasy I've played have that kind of classic video game moment of like, have you done everything you wanted to? And they will often do like a big seismic change in the world order, won't they? Like, something terrible happens and suddenly everything's dark and somber, or suddenly somebody's dead forever, or whatever it is. And something like that happens in this. No spoilers. But then it's just like walking through treacle to pick it back up again. And then just I thought things were getting back on track. I'd done some big boss fights and made some progress in the main storyline. Then I had to spend like a good 45 minutes of my life, my actual life that I get one of, going round and like cobbling together the pissing parts for a ship. But like in 3 separate fetch quests, one after the other. So it was just like, it didn't really mask the fetch questiness of it. And then I didn't get to ride the ship for ages, and when I did, I didn't get to do anything on it. It was just a different bit of scenery to
It's
slap
the
things
worst
on.
ship I've ever had.
All that a boat.
It just wasn't great. So, I mean, gameplay wise, the battle looks great. Everything looks lovely because it's a PlayStation 5 game. Really like detailed, pretty. The battle is like one of those cool things that they've done it very differently. It's not anymore that sort of old school Final Fantasy thing where you select an action and it happens and you're not doing it in real time, you're kind of queuing it up. This is in real time. You only control Clive. You don't control any of his friends. You don't get to choose the party members either. They just swap in and out for story beats, which is quite annoying.
Yeah, that's
I didn't feel they were present.
Yeah.
I didn't feel they were present at all because they're there. So sometimes, Jill, for example, she slings around some ice magic, and every so often I'd see like an ice crystal pop somewhere, but then I'd be like, "But where are you? Like, are you helping? Are you making my life any easier? Jill?
She's just
Why are you-"
fucked up somewhere else.
Yeah. This token effort from something. It's like being at work.
And I was playing this game thinking of Final Fantasy 15, which is my favourite, which you'll hear me bang on about a lot. But that one, you also didn't have a wide range of characters. You had 4, and the whole point was they were very close knit. They were sort of like best bros.
It's like a road trip, isn't it?
It's basically like a road trip. And but in the fights, they were very focused on teamwork, so you'd still just play as one of them. But all the characters you could do, if you got your shots in from the blind side, you could do link-ups with some of them where you would physically throw each other around the battlefield to do really cool gymnastics and stab things better. Or like if you fell over, one of them would like, it wouldn't just be they would throw some healing potion at you, they'd come over and help you up and slap you on the back and be like, do better next time. But like it felt like
Very
they were
bro-y, yeah.
they were very like bro-ish. But it felt like they were there with you and doing something, whereas I didn't notice whether Jill was or wasn't there, or whether Joshua was or wasn't there, and it just, why bother?
From what I've seen of you playing it as well, like, and how it looks, and with all the particle effects and the magic going on, like, it's just very easy to like literally lose them on the screen. Like, it's not even a case of them not really contributing to battles. Like, I find it really like easy to keep up with what Clive's doing, but really difficult to see what like anybody else is doing.
Yeah. So I don't feel like I don't feel like they're a proper party. The other ones, I missed being able to switch in people and go, oh, I've got a white mage for this. They can just heal me up while I go stabby, or whatever it is.
So how do you kind of control? So
they just rock up. They do what they like. They just fuck off again.
Yeah.
They're like really bad contractors. You're not sure if they're coming when they say they are. At one point,
no. Really good contractors, or average contractors.
At one point, one of them was like, Clive, you're my brother, I go where you go. And then within 10 fucking minutes of us walking through this field to get to our destination, he was like, I have to go do this thing over there.
I'm not going where you're going.
Right.
Did they
changed my mind?
Did they not get in, like, one of the people that used to work on, like, Devil May Cry or something to do the combat? He says, looking at the room vaguely, like,
and I'm looking back at you vaguely.
But that's how it plays.
Yeah.
From what I've seen, like, for you control Clive like he's Dante in Devil May Cry or something like that.
Oh, I do like Devil May Cry.
You do look awesome. So I just stabbed down a combination of basically 2 buttons, maybe a dodge if I'm feeling fancy, and I leap in the air. I do somersaults, I hack and I slash. At one point, I can get a power where I sort of roar, spread some dragon wings, and then like Care Bear light the enemy to death. Which is excellent, and it looks really cool.
Sounds it.
It makes me feel like I'm a great fighter, and it is exactly what I want from a fantasy fight. But it's just not what I'm here for.
It's
in
not
a Final Fantasy game.
Yeah.
It feels more Dark Soulsy. Having never played it, but I've seen it. It's a bit more dodge, hack, dodge, hack
There's
again.
Nothing Care Bear-y about Dark Souls.
I think you're selling Dark Souls short, if I'm being honest.
Some DLC you should put in a little word for.
Hug Crush.
They mod Dark Souls? Is
Yeah,
that a thing?
I mean, I assume someone is very sad somewhere doing that, and just like their soul
Thomas the Tank Engine is already in it.
a very dark soul.
Yeah. So it's not great, and the other cool thing you can do in combat is because you can become these icons. Clive's one is Ifrit, which is like a big fire beastie thing, which you would think would be great. And initially, it really is. The first couple of times you do it, you're like, yes, the power rush. I've been through all these other Final Fantasies where these things were like the win button, and it was like cower mere mortals because I'm just going to 9,999 damage you all. But once you've done it a couple of times, it's a couple of dodges and they're mostly quick time events. Okay. It's 2023 and we're doing mash square to do a dramatic, clash of blades and push back and, get this dodge button within the time limit to do a cinematic dodge?
Evasion?
Cinematic
evasion?
Dodge.
Evasion?
Yeah. So it looks lovely, but it's always slightly too long and they really wanted it to be a film. I felt like there were times where between that and the cutscenes, there were times where sometimes I'd just be sort of putting my controller down for a good 10 minutes. And it just seemed a bit...
Don't mind me, I'm just looking up what the general reviews are for Final Fantasy XVI.
Well, interestingly, I think they were kind of okay. I think it depends what you're looking for from your game.
Because it just, you're not selling it to me.
No, I wanted to like it more, but it just... the gameplay march...
Don't look at Google. I'm just Google reviews where everyone leaves the best gaming reviews.
So some people really love it. And
Let's go to the website that shall not be named because I can never say it correctly. Yeah. Generally favourable on Metacritic.
I can see how it is a good game functionally. I just don't think it's a good Final Fantasy game. I don't think it had much heart. So the Game of Thrones setting, it's all very medieval, Europe-ish. Everyone's bloody miserable the whole time. Like, the colours are a bit miserable. It's 2023 Europe's also quite similar. But everyone is so miserable, and I get that the story isn't a bundle of roses, but none of the other Final Fantasies are too. They're often something terrible has happened and it gets worse and worse and worse. But people still have time to have fun, or the side quests are fun or light. And, like in Final Fantasy 15, for example, you can go chocobo racing. You can be like, I am trying to reclaim my kingdom and save the world from eternal darkness, but I haven't beaten my friend Gladio on chocobo racing yet, so I'll do that first. And it's great, and the characters enjoy it too, whereas this, everyone's so miserable.
I think that's quite realistic, though, in a way that.
I'm not here for realism.
No,
Like, I'll
sorry.
just do this.
I meant realistic in so much that in Final Fantasy 15 that actually people try and find other sporting pursuits to distract themselves from impending doom.
Yeah.
Like this podcast is ours. Do you know, it's just like, you know, so it is annoying when it's just all glum and it's like, oh, this is kind of like dark and realistic. It's like, no, not really. Like people like, you know, if I was going to go on a quest, I'd still be pissing about. Like, you know, like, I'd know I'd need to do it, but I'd probably just, you know, have a little muck about on the way.
There'd be some levity, wouldn't there?
Yeah.
Like little moments. Like it doesn't even have to be anything too major or anything like that. It's just these odd little asides or something.
Little whoopee cushion here, you know.
Yeah.
Well, like even in the sense that they enjoy anything, you know, like Final Fantasy 12. Like, it's not the most sort of laugh-along game, but it, you know, when they're on the skyship, you get the sense that a couple of the characters really enjoy the life, and, you know, there's that kind of swagger and verve, and these guys are all just, like, traipsing along, and they're all so noble with their fates, and it's just like, I don't care, Clive, just get it done.
Where's that voice in the hideout, eh?
You sound like you're giving him
Clive.
his annual review.
Would it kill you to smile, Clive? Yeah, and I've got a few other things written down here that annoyed me, but were smaller things. So there was a point where one character that I did really like got killed off far too early, and I've just written R.I.P. their name, R.I.P. charisma. Like, there was one character who had any swagger and any flair. There is no flair in this game. I come to Final Fantasy for, like, madness and flair. I want all the belts. I want gravity-defying hair that would not survive a candle being very close to it. Like, I want, you know, chocobo racing, and I want people with unpronounceable names, and I want, you know, some kind of fun and camp, and this just has nothing. I also, there's no chemistry between him and Jill, his love interest, at all.
It is like watching someone smash pieces of wood together.
My goodness. They go through all this life and death, and then they're always just like, are you okay? Yes. Good.
I feel like there might, but so is there something to that though? I mean, I'm going to come on to that one of those kind of points a little jokingly in my review, but at the same time, like, is it? I mean, what is the rating of the game? Is it meant to be played
this
by
18?
Okay, yeah.
So
therefore, there probably should be a bit more.
Oh no, they get naked on a horrible stony beach, but even that is chemistryless. It's really grim. It's 2023. Like, I have written down here, like, not many Final Fantasy games nail this, which is kind of fine. It's not really what they're here for. They're more like action games, and the romance there is a bit of a plot hook.
Yeah.
It's not the focus. But, like, it's 2023. If we can't get a vaguely... I don't want to, like, see them literally doing it on the beach, but I do want to, like, have a sense that they might.
Like a plausible relationship.
When that camera cut away, although they had kissed once... I just assumed they were going to lay down next to each other, put his sword between them like some kind of medieval chastity device, and just go down.
That's fine. There's your realism, right there.
I guess it's tiring, Kristen. Sorry, Jill, I've killed too many monsters tonight.
My arms are really tired.
Have you seen the size of this sword? And this one.
Oh, no. Too many flans haunting my dreams. Oh, no. I imagine some sort of like weird like condom advert like in that dystopian sort of future where it's just like that's
got protection.
That's the noise that they play on the advert. Like it's fine.
So I'm nearly done, I promise, complaining. But there's one thing that I wrote in caps because I was so annoyed by it, and this is a gameplay mechanic. So it is, why can I stuff my tight leather pockets full of bloody hides and scales, but I can't have more than 3 high potions at one time?
What?
Yes, exactly. So, like, you know the sort of trope of, like, games go one of 2 ways a lot of the time, don't they? They're either like, yeah, shove it all in your pockets, mate. It's like the fucking TARDIS in there. Just cram it in. It's all good. Yeah.
It's a video game.
You can have precisely 6 things and you must choose. Mm-hmm. And whichever one you choose is the wrong answer later on in the game. This one, every fucking other thing in the game, I have stuff for this crafting system that I never use because it's pointless. Like, stuff coming out my ears in this very tight leather outfit. there's a whole quest about getting a slightly bigger potion bag, which it doesn't let you do till far too late in the game. And the whole thing just undermines the gameplay and the combat as well, because what it does is, if you die in a boss fight, it goes, we'll respawn you halfway through, or like where you sort of chipped the kind of gauge down to. If you reach certain thresholds, it'll go back to there with all of the potions you could have had anyway.
Right.
So I kept on doing these long and arduous crawls up through these dungeons, stab all the minor things, one mini boss, roll my eyes, oh my god, there's another mini boss, well I'm out of potions, because obviously I am. Here's the main boss, oh I'm dead, oh I'm back alive with all my potions. I mean, all 3 of them, but I'm still back alive. Just rubbish. It's just pointless. Be consistent with your fantasy. Side quests.
Said mum.
Side quests. So the side quests they really annoyed me. And again, a lot of the internet disagreed with me on this. Some people said the side quests were great and the best part of it, which is never a thing you should say about a game, I don't think.
I completely agree.
Yeah, I didn't want to do them. I mean, like, I know side quests are always in any kind of game a variation on a theme of go here and get this thing, go here and kill this thing, go here and talk to this person, or sometimes all 3. And it's hard to disguise them in a good way. But I was comparing it in my mind again with Final Fantasy XV, because basically I was just like, I'd rather be playing that. And the difference is, in this one, I didn't want to do any of the side quests because I didn't care. I didn't like any of the characters enough. I didn't hate them, and that's the other thing. I didn't have any feelings towards any of them. They were blank slates. So I kept walking past these people in my like hideout of outlaws, and I was like, I see you've got a green marker, but I'm not engaging. So I only did the ones that you had to do to get better equipment, which took me through 4 different quests about how sad the blacksmith was. Woof. And yeah,
they're always sad blacksmiths, aren't they? They're never happy. Everyone
underpaid, poor conditions.
Yeah, just a thought.
Wife's dead. Oh well. I can just crack on. They said before to Clive, just crack on. Make the metal. Shut up.
It just occurred to me, if you are, leading this band of people and you're marching through the hideout and they all have their problems and you're just having to focus on what you're doing and getting equipped so that you can, go and save the world and all that kind of stuff, is there not thematically an element of this is what real leadership would be like?
Yeah.
Is it trying to prove a point, or am I giving it far too much credit?
No, I think that's what Clive thinks. And like, there was some attempt at levity where often he'd be like, I guess I'll go do that next time I'm there then. And like, you could tell he was trying to make a bit of a wry joke, but
that could have been
it didn't land.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you've got guys for this, Clive.
He's got Gav.
It's got
Gav's
Gav.
for.
Gav. Yeah, and I was thinking like Final Fantasy XV also had some on paper terrible side quests. So one that I really enjoyed, you've got like you're like the crown prince of this kingdom. One of your mates, Gladio, is like your sort of burly, like strong shield and defender, and for reasons that are never very clear, he asks you specifically to get up early with him one morning and go and pick a bunch of flowers because his younger sister has a crush on you that he doesn't want to encourage, but you're going to pick the flowers anyway to make her happy. And like, I was willing to engage with this because by that point I liked all the characters enough to be like, this is going to be fucking hilarious because like, grumpy old Gladio is like, I want my sister to be happy, but not with you, but also not unhappy, so pick the flowers, you bastard. That's not his voice.
I felt like it was. It is now in my head.
It might as well be. But because I liked all the characters enough, that was a great side quest, and that's how you mask the fetch this, collect these things, go kill this, talk to that person. But I didn't have that for any single character in 16, and I spent like, 40, 50 hours with it so far.
Yeah.
It must be nearly at the end, and it's just not there. So to summarise, because I'm boring myself now. Oh no, one more thing. No, this is a good thing though. I checked, and I think it's right. Final Fantasy XVI has the first official canonically gay couple in a Final Fantasy.
Oh, right, okay. Interesting. Yeah.
Despite the homoerotic undertones of 15.
I mean, it's pretty
where
consistently
they all sleep in a
homoerotic.
very small tent.
And it's the one tent as well, isn't it?
It's the one tent, yeah.
There's 4 of it.
Yeah. They're constantly telling you to take bits of clothing off if they're too hot and all
That's
that sort
true,
of thing.
yeah.
But yeah, no.
You looked wistful there.
No,
It was a good game.
An actual gay couple, like, it was nicely introduced. It's not like a big deal, Like they're just there, and
Yeah.
one of the guys is like a proper badass with his fighting skills and stuff. It's just nice to see. So, you know, well done for that. But my summary is, it's pretty visually, but it's got zero flair, and I probably would stand by my decision to not have bought it unless it was bundled in with the PlayStation anyway. I just need more camp in the Final Fantasy, and it didn't deliver.
Fair enough. Arbitrary score out of 10.
5. It's fine.
That was a long 5.
I'm not going to miss it. I'm not going to remember it much. Yeah.
Well,
you've
immortalised it now on the internet.
Yeah.
I just want to let you know that we're round out the exact same time that you spent on that side quest for the parts on your ship and the podcast. Right now, in 3, 2, 1, 45 minutes. There we go. So, which I'm quite happy about. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't make me want to play any modern Final Fantasies at all.
Oh, wait, I'll tell you about 15 later.
Okay, right. You know, I hope you did say that was your favourite, so yeah, I'm happy about that then. So I'm glad that you've got something to hold on to. Richard,
Is it me?
young man. It doesn't have to be,
It can be me.
but you know,
I'm ready.
I feel like I want to be brought back to, you know, ye olde times, but not all the way back to my ye olde times. Medium times. For some reason, my 2-year-old
Take
Rowan.
it back to the 90s.
Yeah, my 2-year-old Rowan has just started out of nowhere. Just started going old times. That's his sentence. Old times, and I'm like, I don't know what you want, or that is, or it's a thing. Like, as in, I'm just like, it's old times. I'm like, you just driving me fucking insane.
Does he worry that you're living in the past?
It's like, I don't know. Like, are you the doctor? Like, I don't know. Like, it's a weird thing that's going on. So,
Wow.
Bring me back. Maybe he wants this review.
This is old times.
Maybe he's after your review.
Old times. Okay.
Like Park Life.
Yeah.
It's not about your Vorsprung Dirk technique, you know.
Old times. Anybody else feel old thinking about Park Life?
Yeah.
Gee, thanks, Fiona.
Was that out? I guess, I'm right, what year would that have been out? Like 94, 95 maybe?
Something like that.
And that's like, and that is in line with when these games were out, the early Final Fantasy games, which is weird. So, yeah, cool. Go for it.
So, I am choking on sour patch Kids
That was a
because
bad...
I thought Faz's story would take longer than that.
Oh, sorry. Right, okay. That's Rowan's fault.
Old times. So, I did Final Fantasy VI, which, if you're in North America and you're playing it on the SNES, was Final Fantasy III, just to really confuse everybody. So, full disclosure, when we were doing the chat earlier on about Final Fantasy stuff and our favourites and stuff like that, I was conspicuously quiet for a reason. I've never finished a mainline Final Fantasy game.
Wow.
Ever.
Okay. I mean, that's a fair thing to say because they're quite extensively long.
Yeah. But I could count on one hand how many I'd played up until relatively recently.
Yeah.
So it was only when I got my SNES Mini that I kind of really started playing Final Fantasy 6/3. I'd dabbled with 7. I think I'd witnessed a friend of mine trying to play through one of the dungeons on 12, I think. Was it 12 where you had like a load of things that you had to move around in one of the... Oh, it might have been 10, actually. It might have been all the way back on 10. Either way, it was the kind of thing that he was clearly mashing his head against a brick wall. I'm not sure he was having fun.
No.
And I was just in the vicinity. I was like, this is... I've come all the way to the other side of Wokenham to sit watching you play this. Like, what? I hadn't really dabbled much. And then much more recently, I was like, well, yeah, I probably should try and play a couple of them. I've got 7. I've got copies of like 9 and all that kind of stuff. Very, very quickly, 6 was the one I settled on as the one that I'm going to connect with. And that's not necessarily because a load of people were recommending it. Like, it would be a lie to say that wasn't a bit of a steer in making me zero in on that. But it was, within a couple of minutes of playing it, I was like, shit, like this has me now.
Yeah.
And I've got loads of copies of Final Fantasy VI now on different platforms. I've got the soundtrack and all this kind of stuff. Like,
Swag.
It's got me. But like, I think to go back to what Fiona was saying about the party in particular, the party in 6, they all feel like individual characters, but you are on board with the fact that they have been thrown together in this situation. Like, I think for the age of the game, the year it came out, and how economical it has to be with the language it uses and things like that, it does a really good job at making you feel like these people have all been drawn or thrown together and are working towards a common goal. You know, they have their disagreements, but they ultimately are there for each other on some level and all that kind of stuff. And it's really effective. And not only that, but like the pixel art as well is genuinely possibly some of my favorite ever in anything. And like how expressive they can make those little characters for not really doing much with them. You know, like sometimes they'll turn to the camera and fucking gurn at the camera and stuff like that on like a 16-bit game. And like, you add in the sort of scale of some of the set pieces, or like the fact that it opens with this cutscene of them, these like hulking suits of armor trudging through the snow and stuff like that on a fucking 16-bit game. Like the audacity to try and put something like that together and like have a story of that scale. And that's even before you get into like the famous opera scene and, you know, when you have this cataclysmic event and all that kind of stuff. And it's just, yeah, the will to try and make something of that size and scale just really impresses me.
Yeah.
Like, it really does. It's helped by the fact that it is genuinely good fun to play. So it's a pretty classical Final Fantasy battle system. You know, you've got your timer bars and all that kind of stuff. You take your turns, you get punched in the face, you cast some magic, all that good stuff. You've got the specialisms and the sort of jobs, if you like. They're not called jobs, but everybody's got a role to play that's very specific that you have to consider. You've got things like one of the characters will, you have to use like fighting game inputs and stuff like that to get them to do special moves and things like that, which is pretty cool. This is the only game I'm aware of where you can suplex a train. Which, you know, points there.
Am I aware of any?
Apart from that Skyrim mod.
Apart from that Skyrim mod, I guess, yeah. But like, there's all sorts of those little moments where it's just like, okay, I've fought through a ghost train. I am fighting the ghost train. I'm apparently running very, very backwards. Very, very backwards? Running very, very fast backwards to fight this train. And I can suplex it if I want. And it's just those sorts of things, like Fiona was saying earlier, about like those little moments where it's just like you look at it and you're like, this is fucking nuts. Or like the big bad Kefka just being this like utterly deranged, like Joker-esque clown who is like completely deranged, like terrifyingly so. Again, for a 16-bit character. Like, genuinely unsettling.
I've heard that he's like the best villain like ever
in
any video game, pretty much.
He'd be up there. He would be up there. And like, there are those that kind of Jokerish bent, but at the same time, there's just something around the juxtaposition of the kind of jaunty and disturbing music, and also like he's got this little kind of laugh, and some of the genuinely unsettling shit he does, and all that kind of stuff that just
watches you sleep.
Not quite.
Put your hand in bowls of warm
may
water.
well do. But like, the game's very, very good at using the tools at its disposal to portray all this, right? So like, sometimes you'll have like a cutscene play out, and you know the view will be exactly the same kind of top-down thing like normal, but then it will suddenly switch to like the battle view, and you're like, oh shit, I'm gonna have to do a fight. But no, it's still the cutscene. It's just that they decided that you would get a better view of what was going on from the side.
Yeah.
And so that's the view they're using. And it's things like that, like, it's a boring word, but economical was the one I kept coming back to for how it tells its story.
It's the last pixel one though, isn't it? Because after 6 you then get 7, which is polygony, and then 8 is your full-on weird moment where we're trying those little cutscenes in horrible computer animation that can't match the actual. Yeah,
and it's handy you mention that, actually, because I think on the PS1 version they put in a load of those kinds of cutscenes.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Like mainly at the start and like a couple of other big story moments. But yeah, that was where they started to go, oh, actually, we could try and put some of this in. It helps, but I think like when I was trying to come up with how I was going to score this, what I ended up coming to was the kind of, I've said before now about when we've reviewed stuff, and I've said that there's been a newer version of it that's kind of superseded it.
Mm-hmm.
I think with the PS1 version that I just mentioned, the Pixel remaster, all that kind of stuff, like they all add in good stuff, be it cutscenes or the Pixel remaster has, you can turn off encounters if you want, or, tweak the difficulty or just walk through it a bit quicker.
How do you grind?
You don't necessarily have to, because they've got sliders so you can set like the XP that you get for an encounter is much higher and stuff like that. So it gives you some good tools to like customize the experience if you want.
That.
Yeah, it's a great idea. But all of those together, still, as far as I'm concerned, having played the SNES one, like I have been alongside these ones, I don't think any of them add so much that they completely supersede that original version, or at least that version. I'm only saying that because as soon as I said that out loud, I was like, did the PS1 version come out first? I'm pretty sure it didn't, but just in case.
And there was Advance, wasn't there, as well? Like, it was on,
and that, like there's been a bunch of different versions of it, and they've all built on it, but I don't think any of them have ever replaced it. So like you could go in, you could play the SNES version, and it'll effectively still be the same experience. And I think that speaks to it. I think that is, the one of the greatest things about it is the fact that original core experience is so good that it's still, you could play any version and it'll do the job. So yeah, like it is a bit grindy. I would be lying if I said I'd finished it. I'm far into it. I'm not nearly as far as I hoped I would be, because I had to go back and redo stuff.
Yeah.
Because I was playing on the SNES Mini, I did do a fair bit of saving away from where you would normally be able to save, and I was still getting caught out. So it's a difficult game, and I can imagine it would be quite frustrating if you weren't careful with it. But nonetheless, I think they're ultimately kind of minor things, and like I say, if you go play the Pixel remaster, it gets rid of a lot of the frustrations should you wish to, or you can make it harder. And all that kind of stuff.
How would you do that to yourself?
It's an option.
Kefka.
But yeah, like I really like it. I really like what it does, and I really like how it goes about it. There's a couple of like other little irritating things that, like, if you have a heal rod that basically literally heals people, but you have to use an attack command. If that character gets confused, or the person that you are trying to heal on your party gets knocked out, that attack then gets randomly assigned, but to an enemy.
What?
And things
Fuck
like that.
That's so annoying.
I've seen him get very annoyed.
That was annoying, but I think that's the kind of thing they would tweak and fix in later versions. So like those are the kinds of differences where ultimately the function of the thing itself on like 9 times out of 10 is not going to be different, but that 1 time out of 10 that is going to wind you up is a bit easier to manage nowadays.
I don't know why I sounded so surprised there when I know fine well how many times I've healed an enemy by mistake, and I've been like, for fuck's sake! But that's not even from like a random thing. It's just me pressing the button too many times to go across the screen. It's like, have 1,000 hit points. Go, why not? This isn't the hardest boss I've ever had in my entire life.
So yeah, like part of me kind of doesn't want to finish it because I kind of want it to live forever in my head. But I think for me, it's an easy 8 out of 10, and then it could go up or down either way depending on what version you play or your personal preferences or what have you.
Okay, cool. That is a good time to take a break, mostly because we have to due to Spotify. But anyway, it's also a good time before we get into my paper-thin review of Final Fantasy IV. So check in a minute. You forgot something?
I forgot something from my review. I forgot the music. The music's great.
Yeah?
Final Fantasy VI music. Yep.
We should put that into the interlude we've just had.
Yeah.
And that'll make it cool.
Nice.
I'm going to... I'll do that.
Nice.
Okay, cool. I'm glad we agreed that live. Fiona's already apologised for her overindulgence of the first part, and I don't think you should, because if anything, overindulgence is synonymous with Final Fantasy games.
It's true, that was why 16 was so annoying. It had none of the stuff that makes Final Fantasy great.
Okay, well...
I'm Square Enix.
Localization.
I've got all the belts.
I've got a much better regional accent than any of those actors you have.
Yeah, it sounded like it before. Who was it? Gordio was going, "Hey up, you bastard, with your flowers."
No, 16 has a load of like regional accents, but they're from all over do you know that sort of American thing where they do something in medieval times and they got all the British actors, but they don't get specific about locations. So then you get people from all over the shop, and some of them genuinely are fine and quite good in this. One or two especially. Some of them are very... I was going to go Russell Crowe, like that famous Robin Hood bit where he goes to like 3 different accents. You know?
Yeah.
Old times.
Old times.
So, Final Fantasy IV, but it's the 3D remake for the Nintendo DS. And I didn't know this existed. But
yeah, when was that out?
Yeah, good question.
Old times.
It is old times. I was at university when this came out, 2007, so it is old times.
Old times.
How is that old times?
It's old.
That was like last year.
It just is. That is in, you know. So, yeah, and that was to celebrate the 20th anniversary of the first Final Fantasy VII. No, Final Fantasy VII. Why do you call it that? Final Fantasy. So, I think this was out in 1993 as its original entity, and. Yeah, as Rich alluded to before, this was Final Fantasy II in North America. So it's weird that Final Fantasy VI was Final Fantasy III in North America.
If it was an odd number Final Fantasy, it just didn't come out in America.
I don't understand. It was like, well, we're going to bring out
weird.
4. Yeah, no. So this was Final Fantasy II for a long time. Then it became Final Fantasy IV when they brought out the anthology for the PlayStation 1.
Right.
And then it became... for remake on the Nintendo DS. So just a quick update, I guess, really on the fact that I'm playing a Nintendo DS. So I think that, you know, one of the podcasts before Christmas where we were talking about the Retro Gamer handheld series, and I said that I'd got a DS and I got it from the charity shop for £20, and it works absolutely fine. No one seems to have rubbed poo on it or anything, or
good.
Or at least they rubbed it really well in.
Yeah, or they have, and it's done. It's made it
helped the finish.
It's aged really well. Like, you know, it feels like there's absolutely nothing wrong with this console that is effectively now 20 years old.
Old times.
Yeah, and and so weirdly on Amazon, there is. You can buy DS, I say inverted commas, I guess cartridges, but effectively it's just a memory card, and you can buy ROMs on Amazon, which I didn't think was. It's like grey area we've spoken about before, where it's like grey. I'm like, what? Like a massive conglomerate selling ROMs? Like, I was like, well, if Amazon are selling it, it's absolutely fine for me to buy it, obviously. So I spent £18 to buy these DS games, and I went for like one that had 200 games in it, rather than, you could see it was like for £20 you could get 400 games, and you could see loads of people were like, you know, like, this sounds like a real big generalization, but it was almost like, you know, I'd say granddads and grandmas that were sort of like buying for their grandchildren and going, oh, you know, like, I've got really good value for money here, and I'm like, but those games look shit, mate. Like,
you'll be playing Puck-Man.
Exactly. Whereas I'm going to go for the get 200 for £18.
The premium option.
Yeah.
Only 180 of those are shit.
Yeah. I mean, you know, there's plenty of Nintendogs on there.
Nintendoogs.
How many Animal Crossings are there? Like, it's just ridiculous. But
Animal Crossing.
But I kind of went for it because I knew on there there's of the DS era Pokemons. There's these Final Fantasies, Final Fantasy 3 and Final Fantasy 4, the 3D remakes. But there's plenty of games on there. There's a couple of Zeldas I've never played. And I feel like super happy that I've got 200 DS games for 40 quid with a console. And it seems to work absolutely fine. Nice. So a recommendation from me, if you want to live in the grey area of getting something from a charity shop on Amazon that you're kind of a bit like, ooh, should I be buying this? But I did, and it's made my life super happy. So, you know, like, as in, I won't regret it. Like, I don't think I'll be buried with the DS, like, on my sword, like, as in, you know, like, as in, you know, or anything like that. But at the same time, yeah, it was definitely something that at the time you said I wouldn't recommend it necessarily, but the fact that you could play advanced games on there as well, because it's an original DS. I did have to buy a stylus and I did have to buy a charger, but that cost me like £3 or £4 for both of those off eBay. So it was like, you know, yeah, I would undo your unrecommendation and redo my recommendation and say, yeah, if you've never really played DS or that era, and I didn't, I had a PSP, obviously, you know, then. And I was kind of a little bit jealous of all the games that I saw my friend at university playing through on the DS. So this is all brand new experience for me. It's opened up a whole new world of gaming, which is great. So, and one of these games is Final Fantasy IV, the 3D remake. If considering it's out in 2007, it looks like it was out in 1997. Like it's as polygonic, if that's a word, as Final Fantasy VII was when that came out, which is a bit like, you know, it's probably a bit better to effect. It probably looks a bit more like Final Fantasy IX.
So it's not pixels?
No.
Okay,
so
like a real remake, not just a sort of ported it over.
Yeah, so, and that's cool, because I was a bit like, oh, well, actually, you know, I feel like, I think I would prefer the pixel version, especially after your review of Final Fantasy VI, Rich, in terms of, like, you know, what that 16-bit looked like and what they were capable of. But I can understand why they've done it as well, because, you know, it's almost like you're introducing it to a new generation of people sort of 10, 15 years later. And it didn't take anything away. Like, as in that, it's just sort of apples and, you know, what are close to apples, but far away from oranges, other apples. Two different types of apples where you're kind of like, oh, these are both fine. Like, as in, so, you know, if you like apples, fucking brilliant. Yeah, so the reason I sort of said that this is going to be quite a paper-thin review was almost because I feel like this game, in a positive manner, is quite paper-thin for a Final Fantasy. It takes about 20 hours to complete, which I'm like, I was like, you've piqued my interest. I was like, a game I'm not going to sink loads and loads of time into. I think I kind of got. And again, I'm like you, Rich. I won't lie. I got to about 16 hours, and I will complete it. I just, you know, December was busy. You know, like people coming at me about old times all the time. Just, you know, fucking children. So yeah, I do intend to go back and complete it, but about 75% of the way through. And I'm gonna be honest. I feel like I'm at a point where I'm at a grind where I'm just like I'm gonna have to just get up some more levels to kind of get to the end game. And am I talking out two sides of my mouth there? Am I actually going to go back and play this, or am I going to Wikipedia the end?
I did that with Final Fantasy VIII, and I had the same experience as you, because I got a version that was the remaster, I think. And I was like, great, I can crack on through, because it specifically had a function where everything levels with you, so theoretically you don't have to grind.
Yeah.
You just troll on through, and you can run past encounters if you like. So I was great, story. And then I get to the end, and there's this boss that does like 999 damage to my little party of like 200 HP, and I'm like, well, that was a lie, wasn't it? I'm not going back and doing it again. It wasn't that good. And I looked at the ending and did a little video, and I am none the fucking wiser. So I don't know whether that's a recommendation for you to do it or not do it, but it didn't help me at all either way.
Well, that's fine. Like, I probably won't because I'm lazy. Like, as in, but at the same time, like,
someone will die, something will change, order will be restored, crystals will either be destroyed or reimposed, whichever is the better option for this particular world.
I feel like I don't even need to now look it up. Like, as in, I could just make up your own ending.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So, what does it? Make your own adventures.
Final Fantasy XIV.
Yeah. Remastered. Yeah. So it is kind of paper thin. Like, so of all the Final Fantasies I've played, the story is the most basic, but in a good way. So you are given a main protagonist called Cecil, so not that far away from Clive actually.
Okay.
But he is wearing some serious dark armor drip that looks so uncomfortable. Like, as in, I don't understand. He looks like it's just got so many points on it. I don't know how he's getting around, and it just feels like he's got the spiky hair, but he doesn't have hair. It's just a really spiky helmet. Like, and I think it's kind of meant to look a bit demonic in so much that it's like, you know, he is a dark knight. That is his job. So speaking of the job system you were talking about for Final Fantasy VI, there is no real job system in Final Fantasy IV necessarily. People just given their role. Like you said, it was almost like, so you've got White Mage and you've got Black Mage and other things that I can't really, you know, there's a monk as well. It's like and that will come in when I talk about the offshoot game that I'm going to talk about later on in part 2 of the podcast. However we're doing that. But yeah, so but you don't have to worry about that too much, really. You just worry about equipment. Almost like equipment drives everything, you know, all your MP, all your HP, you know, you just, and as you work through the game, you can buy and pick up better equipment. And it's like, oh, this person now can do this much damage and stuff. I think that the reason that I feel like you always need a walkthrough for Final Fantasies, or me personally, is that I wouldn't necessarily know where in a dungeon that the equipment would be.
I think the older ones, you're right, yeah.
It's just almost like you've got to explore every single inch. The good thing about this one is that, and certainly I don't know what it's like in the actual original game, but on the DS, the screen is split, so you're playing the game on the top screen. On the bottom screen, when you're in a battle, that holds your battle menu, so that doesn't feel like it kind of overfaces you or anything. It actually feels like, oh, this, you know, like I feel like I'm really playing a strategy game where I'm like, oh, I've got my own little menu down here, and I can see what's going up there, which is just like, you know, a generic bomb or a generic flan, like as in, you know, like just annoying you. But then also, when you go into dungeons, you can 100% a map on a dungeon, and you walk around a dungeon and the map reveals itself on the bottom screen as you do so. And if you 100% a dungeon in terms of explore every single inch, it gives you a treat. Like, as in, so it'll be like, oh, you get 3 high potions, which would be a maximum for 5. You know,
how will I carry these?
Yeah, but then it's worth it sometimes. Yeah. It's worth it sometimes because you get like, sometimes you get 3 Phoenix Downs and you're like, oh, actually that's worth quite a bit of money to me. Like, I didn't have to buy them at the shop. So there is incentive to explore every part of the dungeon, and also they're not too big either. Like, they're not sprawling. Like, as in, you know, you might have to go to 2 or 3 sub chambers that you wouldn't need to, just to get all the weapons and stuff that you kind of need for your party at the time. Your party comes and goes as well. So the main story, I'm gonna be honest, like, as in, it was really straightforward. So you're playing Cecil, this Dark Knight, who's the leader of an army called the Red Wings. You are immediately cast asunder by your king, who, you know, Shock has decided he's going to, you know, go crazy, and like, because he's being controlled by an ulterior force that is, you know, off the planet. And then you've got to go on a quest, and basically, so the oppressive king and his army is going around stealing all his crystals. Oh wow, who saw that coming? Yeah, exactly,
that's what we should have done.
Yeah, shit. Restart the pod. And yeah, so you're doing this quest, and then people come and go because of what this king is doing to the land, you know. So someone loses their family and has to join the quest to avenge them, and vice versa. There's a lovely kind of dynamic going on between, I guess, Cecil and his best friend Kane, and Kane is being effectively held captive from a sort of, you know, a memory / sort of mind control point of view. So there's stuff there that you can sink your teeth into. It's complex enough, but it's also quite, you know, floaty light. You know, it's like you know, you don't have to worry about too much. I'm not getting confused, like, it's in by the story, which is great. So yeah, it kind of, and it goes along at a lick. Like I said, it, you know, 20 hours. Like, you know, every cutscene feels like it's just to the point. It's like, oh, shit's happened. Like, okay, we have to go here now. And I do feel like, though, when you get onto the overworld map that you get in all traditional Final Fantasies, where you go from, you know, you kind of go from one town to another and things, you do need a walkthrough sometimes to kind of like direct you in the right direction. Eventually you would find it, but you'd have to go through probably another 20 random encounters before you found the cave you're meant to go into. So I feel like it's easier just to kind of look up and say, oh, just go to the northeast corner, it's there. And it's like, all right, okay, thank you for that. But there's some lovely old Final Fantasy things in there that I kind of hadn't, because I haven't played a Final Fantasy in a long time, but, you know, you go to an inn to rest. That's just nice. You know, it's just nice to go and put your feet up in an inn, spend your 50 gil, and you're just like, oh, yeah, you know, I'm just chilling out at an inn. That's great. You know, you just... again, speaking out of two sides of my mouth here, like, there's something about having random encounters with low-level grunts and just killing them all with, like, one fell swoop and stuff. Like, and when you can take your black mage and just go, right, I'm going to cast Thunder, but I can cast Thunder to every single person across there for the same MP. I didn't quite understand that. I always felt like a bit of a hack where it's like, oh, it's 4 MP to cast Thunder on this one person, or it's 4 MP to cast Thunder on everybody. And you kind of, like... But you do like 80 damage instead of like 60 damage. Right? But when you're hitting such low level grunts to do your level grinding, actually it's enough. And it's like, so you just literally, the rest of your party, you just, you know, it's like Final Fantasy 16, just fucking wherever you've gone. It didn't really matter actually, to be fair, it's fine, it's okay. And also the game's really fair, so the people that come and go to your party seem to be at the right level. They're always a little bit under what your main party characters are, but they come in and you kind of go, well, actually, within 30 minutes, I could probably level them up to where I need them to be. It's never like, oh, God, this person's coming at level 2. And you're like, oh. Like, I don't want to play with you. Leave. Like, so, yeah, it does all the right things. One weird thing that I did want to talk about, which is kind of like I alluded to before in... not that I want Final Fantasy games to be sexualized, but, you know, like... It's a romantic idea, but Cecil's main love interest, Rosa, comes to him early on in the game when he's alone in his tower and about to set off on a quest into the mist to basically, on what would be, you know, and everyone's like, oh, you might die. Like, you know, it might be the last time they ever see each other. And she just comes to him just to worry at him. There's no, there's nothing there that says that. It's just like, you know, like, oh, like, she's gonna... like stay the night, or even like give him a hug or a kiss or anything. You're like, this is weird. Yet immediately in the next town you go to one part of the town, and it's only a very small town. There's an inn and there's an armourer, and like you go into this like little sort of back, and it's not even a room. It's just sort of like these ruins of this town, and there is a character there, and you obviously talk to every single character to find out what's going on, and it's a showgirl, and she goes, oh, I'm going to do this cheeky dance for you. And it's just like, she's just there doing this, just like in a bra and knickers. But nothing happens. It's just so pointless. I don't understand. And I'm like, why is this here? But the other thing wasn't. Like, it's just like, that's not advanced the game, but that would have almost from a story point of view. I'm not saying like, you know, I had to see like polygon bumping, but like, it's like, I didn't understand. Like, it just didn't make any sense to me. It was like, they just feel so confused about what they're trying to do with Final Fantasy at all times. It's almost like, I think the gamer wants this, but not this. It's like, you're so wrong. You're so wrong with what it is. It doesn't make any sense. But
I wonder if that like originally might have been down to some kind of bizarre like Nintendo censorship rule or something like that. You know, having someone cavorting in a bar in their bra and knickers is fine, but having, you know, a meaningful relationship, no, no sex, please. We're Nintendo.
Just the insinuation of
like, no suggestions of intimacy.
And I wouldn't mind, but it happens in the next town. Like, so there's another one that does the exact same
but
dance.
It's the next postcode over, so it doesn't count.
So the only thing, weirdly enough, you could still shave about 5 hours off this game, like as in, and probably not lose anything. Like as in, you could get this a bit tighter. Like there's a point where you kind of, you know, oh, we've chased them all around for all the crystals, and they still seem to be getting the crystals in front of us. And then it goes, but there are more crystals under the ground. And it's all, dun, dun, dun. And you're like, you know, and after sort of, you know, being a bit more of a savvy gamer, you just saw it coming a mile off. You're like, oh, for fuck's sake.
Your crystal princess is in another ground.
And I'm like, I probably would have completed the game by now if it wasn't for that little extra bit. And I didn't feel like I was gaining more from that. But it doesn't, you know, like I'm not going to hold it against it either, because I'm like, he's still coming at a reasonable time of playing through Final Fantasy. But yeah, that's all I kind of had to really say about it, to be honest. That is in the story, for what it is, like I said, it's quite straightforward, is really good. Like, as in, you do feel like you for this, I don't come for the strategy or the gameplay necessarily. Like, it feels like the most basic way of playing Final Fantasy in this one, of all the Final Fantasies I've played, which is like 4. Yeah, but the story actually does a good job of keeping you sort of flowing over it, which is good. So yeah.
Can I ask a really boring question?
Please do.
It's basically administrative. So on like Final Fantasy VI, when I was playing the SNES version, one of the things that wound me up was menus. So like, if you have like a list of items and you use one, say 2/3 of the way down, nothing else is going to bump up to take that space. It leaves it blank.
Oh yeah.
And like, similarly, if you equip like an Esper to start to learn the magic and pick up the spells, like, it won't organize that spell list. So you might have to scroll for it, like, through loads of blank space before you get to anything you can use. I know on the Pixel Remaster, or I think I know on the Pixel Remaster, they rejig that so you can reorganize it. Like, with this remake, have they done anything with any of that?
Yeah, so on the negative side, the menu, it does still just blank it out.
Oh, does it?
Yeah,
Right.
which is weird. But again, with the DS screen, it's like you kind of have double screen, so it's almost like you get more space, so it's not a massive thing.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
And you can use the touch screen to actually select it, so it's almost like, like, it's quite easy. But on the positive side, they have changed that you can reorder your spells and things and stuff and make that easier. So they've half thought about it.
So you've kind of got an option to deal with it if you want. Because I know, like, on like, I played a bit of the Chrono Trigger remake for DS and stuff like that, and like, I think that was broadly similar with having a load of that stuff on the separate screen, and even that felt a bit more easier to deal with. So yeah, I just wondered if the second screen made a difference.
Yeah, I mean, I can't speak for it because I didn't play the original, but it sounds silly, but it just feels you make the assumption that actually it is better. Like, it's almost like they can see the thought about it. And in terms of, like, the 3D sort of thing, like, there's just a couple more cutscenes, and that's kind of it, really. And it's just more aesthetically pleasing, almost, in a way, to be able to walk around and sort of see a bit more what's going on. And the fact that they took the time to rebuild it, even if it is, I guess PS1 graphics, almost, in a way, like, as in, it's still it's well presented. So I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. And I would say that for me, if I wanted to just get in at a ground level of Final Fantasy, like, and as you said right at the start, as a series, none of it flows. You can just pick whichever one you want. I would highly recommend getting in on this. And if you can, probably get the DS one as well. Like, as in, unless you are tied to, I want to do a Pixel sort of earlier one. Because, it just feels like probably the baseline of what you can get for a really good Final Fantasy and not be too tired at the end.
Overwhelmed.
It can feel like a commitment, can't it?
Yeah. So that's our. So I guess, did you want to talk a little bit Final Fantasy 15 at this point a bit more, or not? Or is it like?
Oh no, I've got my Trojan horse for the next episode.
Right, okay, fair enough.
So
that's fine.
Congratulations, that is all from me.
Nice. Well taken. I'm having more Sour Patch Kids.
Who's to live with this?
Yes, cool. my wife, everybody.
So, part 2 of the podcast for Final Fantasy will be coming up next week. For us, it'll be about 35 seconds time. So, yeah, cool. Speak to you soon.
Ba-ba-da-ba-ba-ba-ba-da.